Hello, everybody. I hope that you had a very nice day and that you could also participate to different workshops of this session of the European Week of Regions and Cities. The first one we do in virtual mode. So we are also exploring, and I guess that it has been maybe the case on the day, we are exploring how to make the best use of the different tools we have which are available to us. I would like to welcome you to this workshop on tourism recovery through cooperation. And I think that the title, the name of the workshop says basically everything you need to know on the purpose of what we will try to discuss and achieve during today's meeting. In order to prepare this workshop, my colleagues, and in particular Johanna Maud-Nisler, that you know very well, in cooperation with some colleagues of DG GROW, but also with some macro-regional tourism key implementers with interact programs and also external experts, we've joined forces to present this session. And certainly we're hoping that it will be giving useful results in order to look forward on the way we can use cooperation to support tourism recovery. I'm asked to deliver a few, I would say, scene-setting words on this workshop. We all know that the tourism sector has been particularly impacted by the COVID-19 crisis. But it's good also to know what is the place dedicated to tourism in the what we call ETC, so European Territorial Cooperation, or the word what we use very commonly is interact programs. Tourism is already a very important topic, and in particular what we call sustainable tourism. Right now we are funding with the current program more than 1,000 projects, which are involving nearly 5,000 partners. So it's something we're already investing in. And this is also something providing us with a solid base on how to look at the next steps. In Europe also, as in terms of economic sector, tourism is something very important. It represents roughly 10% of the EU GDP, and also 12% of the job in the European Union. What is important to keep in mind is that also the share of people who are under 35 who are working for tourism is very high. It's more than 40% of the job are dedicated to very young people. So it has very important sensitivity in Europe in the current context. Now, if we roll back to territorial cooperation and macro-regional strategies, we see that tourism has a very important place. It has a very important place also because we consider that it is an area where cooperation may bring important added value. And we have been looking at that also with studies, and I just will give you one example of the studies. Is the performance of macro-regional strategies with recommendation on their future role with the EU cohesion policy in 2018, and also the very recent report on the implementation of macro-regional strategies, but I will come to that report also. In order to prepare this, we have been working with the coordinators of the macro-regional strategies, of the 4 macro-regional strategies, and they all recognize that a structured cooperation between the strategies can help providing concrete solutions to the challenges raised by the pandemic. And it has been basically this finding which has triggered also the subsequent step, and which is also leading us to be together today. As we speak also about cooperation, certainly we speak about cooperation between regions, cooperation between macro-regional strategies, but also cooperation in the Commission, between Commission services. And something very important is that we've been working very closely with DG GROW and the unit of Mrs. Atanasopoulou, who will be with us at a later stage today. She's right now at another event on tourism. We've also hired an expert in tourism, Mr. Dracopoulos, who is with us today, and will present his report. So welcome, Georgios. The scope of the study is really to see what cooperation can bring to the recovery of the tourism sector. It is taken through different angles, and we are going to listen to the presentation of Mr. Dracopoulos later today. I will now present to you the panelists who are going to intervene. And the first one I will present is Mrs. Anna Atanasopoulou, who is working in DG GROW, and she is the head of the unit in charge of tourism policy. And she will present to us the latest development on tourism policy. We are also going to have together to have with us George Dracopoulos, that I already mentioned, who is the CEO of the tourism expert company called Tourism Generis. And Mr. Dracopoulos was commissioned by DG REGIO to produce a report that will be presented to us. The next speaker will be Mrs. Simona Ene, who is a program manager in the Joint Secretariat in the Inter-EU Transnational Program, called also the DTP, which is the transnational program supporting the implementation of the Danube strategy and playing a very instrumental role in the development of the strategy. We expect in that context Mrs. Ene notably to help us to see how we can embed the priorities of tourism in the different cooperation program in order to give them a way forward. Then we are going to listen to Mrs. Vlasta Karic, who is expert in tourism at the Ministry of Tourism of Croatia and works in the user facility point as thematic expert and as senior expert advisor. Mrs. Karic will explain to us the actions of the user which could be relevant for the return to the tourism to a new normal. And then afterward, we will give the floor to Mr. François Boissac, who is Director for Tourism in the region of Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes. And he will give us the views from the presidency of the Alpine macro region on the embedding, but also on the new tourism macro-regional product that will enhance tourism recovery. And last but not least, I will also give the floor afterward. I'm checking with Joanna to be sure that I'm on the right track for the way forward for the discussion. But afterward, I will also give the floor to Baiba Lipa, that you know all very well, who is a program manager in Interact 3 program, and who has an incredible experience in macro-regional cooperation. And today, I will share the role of moderator with Baiba, who is responsible to moderate the interaction with our public. And in order to enhance the participation of the public, we will also address various questions during the workshop, where we will ask for your opinion. I'm looking now at Baiba through my camera, and I think I will now give you the floor. Is it right?
Thank you very much, Jean-Pierre. Thank you very much. Good afternoon to all of you. Also from our side, from Interact program side, I am very pleased together with my colleague Ivano Magazou and myself to support you throughout this discussion with the technical side of this meeting. And we aim to have this event interactive. As interactive we can propose for this online environment we are all placed. And we will put in a chat, in a Zoom chat, and Ivano is doing it now, a link where we ask you 3 questions as the warm-up. So if you would take your other tool or use a browser on your computer, would go to slido.com, which is the short version of the long link, and you enter the code 685261. You will be asked 3 questions, where the first one is about, please tell us which institution do you represent. The second one will ask, what do you think, where the investment is needed? And then the third one will be about the objectives you yourself are ready to contribute to. So we see now on the screen how the pool is changing and how many of you represent which institutions. I know we are more than 13, even more than 17, and this is where you see the number of votes count. So please participate, please let us know. We will encourage our speakers then later to see the audience, to see who is present, and to think how you can pass the message to those present today. Ivano, can we please move to the next question? So this one is about where, in which policy objective you see that there is a need, most of a need for the investment. And if you scroll down now a bit, you see also there are 2 Interreg specific objectives added. So please vote there.
Unfortunately, with Slido, we cannot reduce the size and the zoom of the window, so just scroll down, please.
Yes, thank you, Ivano. Down or up, you choose. I see so far that a greener Europe and more connected Europe are the leading policy objectives for investment. Oh no, sorry. Europe closer to citizens is now 7. And if we would go to the next poll, we would see also where here you insert the open text, open pretext, where what are the objectives you would like to contribute most, or you are ready to contribute. Okay. While we wait for replies here, can we get back, Ivano, please, to the first question and to see if there is any change who are participating today. So we see that there are 15 representatives of public sector organizations. We see there is 1 person representing funding program to say and assign themselves to particular macro-regional strategy. 6 are from tourism organization, including public and private sector, and 6 say they are very closely linked with academia and research. So I think with this one, we could close the voting. Yeah, we keep it open, but we stop sharing the screen and we move back, Jean-Pierre, to you, to the moderation. Thank you.
Thank you, Baiba, for organizing this, and also thank you, Anna. I see that you are there. I'm impressed by the number of participants before that meeting, because on my side, I see that I have 3 full screens, so that's quite a success for an interactive meeting. And now I will ask Anna to intervene and basically to tell us what keeps you busy, and also to help us answering the question about where cooperation may help and may contribute to the tourism recovery. So Anna, thank you again for being with us, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jean-Pierre. Thank you for having me, and good afternoon, everyone. Happy to be part of this very interesting discussion. I joined the discussion with in this workshop with 5 messages. This is what I would like to bring with me. First of all, it's about the place of tourism in local economies, and then the natural synergies for our cooperation, Jean-Pierre, and for synergies between tourism policy and cohesion policy, among other things. The place of tourism in local economies, Jean-Pierre, you already mentioned the figures for the EU. We see that, yes, indeed, tourism matters for the EU. It matters for the employment as it matters for the revenues, for the GDP. It's true that in 12 EU member states, tourism generates between 25 and 10% of their national GDPs. And they're not all of these member states located in the south. So that's interesting to know that, and let's keep it in mind. At the same time, we see also regions very much relying on tourism as a source for the local economy. Sometimes areas like coastal areas or islands or well-known tourism hotspots are showing perhaps a high dependence on tourism, the tourism sector, something that makes them indeed more vulnerable to sector-specific shocks, and we see that with the current pandemic. But at the same time, we see a number of regions across the EU which can benefit more from more sustainable, smarter tourism development and for more growth generated by tourism for the local economies and the local communities. And that brings in a way the natural synergies between what we do from the point of view of tourism policy and what our colleagues in DG REGIO are doing from the point of view of cohesion policy. Our job is to make sure that we create a healthy and favorable environment for tourism businesses and for the tourism ecosystem in the EU to function like it should at its best, to create those conditions, and at the same time set out the framework for cooperation and facilitate the cooperation between member states. And in this exercise, it's clear that cohesion policy can bring a very significant contribution to the tourism ecosystem with clear investments and investments being decided and managed closer to the ground. And in the current period, we're looking at investments which are close to 5 billion euros for tourism. So that's important to note. My second message is slightly different though. It's about where we are now. And what we can say now about tourism is that tourism in the EU suffers. We have witnessed dramatic impacts of the pandemic on the tourism ecosystem, which is disrupted to a great extent due to the travel restrictions that were introduced for public health reasons. Indeed, when we look at the most recent Eurostat data, the period between February and June this year saw a fall by 75% within the tourism sector, which is far more compared to the average for the other services sectors in the EU, which is at 16.4%. So it's a huge, huge difference. And that brings at risk more than 6 million jobs across the EU and across EU regions. And also puts under enormous pressure a number of tourism companies. We're looking at 2.4 million companies in the EU, many of them more than 90% SMEs. They're facing acute liquidity problems, and some of them have remained closed in the summer or consider remaining closed for the winter season. But at the same time, these impacts vary across the different regions due to a number of factors. For instance, we saw during the summer that destinations like mountain resorts, coastal areas and rural areas managed relatively well during the summer, largely thanks to domestic tourism. However, we're looking at a completely different situation when we're looking at cities, for city trips, or for areas that rely very much on business tourism. And I think this outlook, which is gloomy but also nuanced, is also reflected in the study that was conducted and to which you referred to earlier, Jean-Pierre, on the 4 macro regions, and it will be very interesting to discover the details more closely in a few minutes. So all in all, we're looking at a gloomy outlook for tourism at short term, with an estimated drop of revenues of up to 70% for the third quarter of 2020. And many actually estimate that for the full recovery of the tourism ecosystem, we may need 2 to 3 years, some even talk of 4 years. But of course, this is all speculation at this point in time. Now let me come to my third message on what the Commission has done for tourism so far. Not only the Commission represented by DG GROW, but the Commission collectively speaking, because we do act in synergy and in complementarity, and we act as one house. So what the Commission has done since the beginning and the very early stages of the outbreak of the pandemic was to mobilize all available tools at our disposal, first to save businesses and jobs overall in the economy, but also in the tourism sector. And we saw the flexibility to reallocate unused funds under cohesion policy, and again under the CRE plus instrument. This is an opportunity that we know that some member states are already using, I think, also to fund tourism. We do hope that wherever this possibility exists, that it will be used. Second, with a sure initiative to protect jobs, people behind the businesses and behind the numbers, where the Commission brought 100 billion euros as a proposal to mitigate unemployment risks in the member states, reinforce existing employment protection schemes, and help member states to create new ones where they didn't exist. And we know that this is also used to protect jobs in the tourism sector. And last, perhaps relevant here to mention the temporary state aid framework, where travel and tourism businesses have been benefiting from support given by member states. And we have seen more than 200 state aid schemes approved so far in member states, targeting either directly tourism and travel companies or benefiting indirectly tourism and travel companies in the context of horizontal schemes. So that's interesting. First of all, save the business and the jobs, because that's very important. Secondly, of course, and an area where we need to continue working is about coordination among member states in order to make travel and tourism possible in a safe and secure manner. Already in May, we adopted the so-called tourism and transport package, where we brought together different proposals and guidance to set out a framework for hygiene and safety protocols in all modes of transport and in tourism establishments. Also guidance on the use of vouchers in case of cancellations of reservations, and first attempts to coordinate the criteria and the measures member states are taking which have an impact on free mobility of people in the single market. Very important for the functioning of transport and tourism, of course. And only yesterday, the Council also adopted a proposal by the Commission that will allow us from now on to issue on a weekly basis the map of Europe with all the different regions with the different colors from green to orange to red, depending on different criteria. And what is important here is that these color codes will be based on commonly agreed criteria by member states, which is not the case today. So that's a very big step, and we hope that it will also help us to provide more reliable information to citizens in real time, because for that purpose, we launched already back in June, Reopen EU. I hope you know it, and I hope you have used it as travelers. We launched this web platform to provide real-time information to citizens about travel restrictions, possibilities, what measures are in place, and once arriving at the destination, what measures to expect, what services are open, and under which conditions. And we are encouraged by the fact that in the first 2 months of its existence, Reopen EU received more than 6 million single visitors. So, and we will continue to support this instrument and make it available to citizens. Now, the third, of course, is about the money. It's about the financial means that the Commission proposed back in May for sustainable recovery. We know that following the agreement of the European Council, we have now, and we can potentially have in our hands and in the hands of member states and regions, a combined budget of 1.85 trillion euros for the next 7 years. That combines the recovery fund of 700 billion euros and the EU budget under the next MFF. This is very important for tourism. Why? Because at the same time in May, we identified, we estimated the investment gap for the tourism ecosystem based on the impacts that we had monitored that, by then. The investment gap that we're looking at is at 161 billion euros in 2020 and 2021. And this doesn't cover investment needs to green the sector and make the sector smarter and more digital. So there is a lot that we can do with the new financial opportunities that the Recovery Fund brings, and of course the new EU budget will bring under the next 7 years. Now, what kind of opportunities, what kind of investments and reforms we would like to see in the national recovery plans that member states are now elaborating and developing in order for them to be able to deploy the so-called Recovery and Resilience Facility? There's different. I mean, looking at the 7 flagship projects that the Commission has encouraged so far in its guidance to the member states, we see a lot of relevant investments and reforms to tourism, from investing in clean mobility and emerging trends such as night trains, or cycling, updating infrastructure in tourism, from hotels, campsites, ski resorts, attraction parks, to improve energy performance, to develop circular business models. More broadly, create incentives to develop sustainable destinations. We can think of plastic-free destinations or carbon-neutral destinations. What kind of investments we need to get there. Investments to diversify the national tourism product, investments in lesser-known destinations, investments in diverse forms of tourism, from cultural, rural, agro-tourism, sport, health, medical tourism, etc. Thinking of the digitization side, I mean, there again, there's a number of services that we can help the sector to develop, from services automated for check-in in hotels or key travel hubs to the so-called contactless services, but also services to create new digital content for future travelers based on artificial intelligence, on virtual reality or on augmented reality. Thinking also of the people and the skills that are missing. Investments can be a channel to reskill and upskill tourism entrepreneurs, workers, and also destination managers, and also to modernize public administrations responsible for tourism policy and management. That brings me to my 4th message, which is about cooperation. And it's about the fact that cooperation that we see in the macro-regional context, cooperation that we see cross-border or among regions, is very important in the case of tourism. Why? Because on one hand, yes, tourism is locally rooted, but at the same time, tourism doesn't exist without mobility, and mobility in many, many cases is cross-border mobility, people moving across borders, and also the challenges that we are facing in tourism, sustainability, digitization, skills gaps, and now the consequences of the pandemic cannot be faced only at local level, and cooperation can bring a lot of dynamic and a lot of solutions to advance on these challenges and on these issues. And at the same time, the type of investments that I've been referring to earlier, when they happen across borders, can actually multiply positive effects. And that brings me to my final message. I talked a lot about the investment opportunities, recovery, the financial tools that are on the table. But all of these tools are not enough without a shared vision for the future of tourism. We need to know where we'd like to see European tourism in 5, 10 years, 20 years from now. This is why Commissioner Breton, who's responsible for internal market and also tourism in his portfolio, organized this Monday, 2 days ago, the European Tourism Convention to kickstart a dialogue and build consensus on a roadmap for the European tourism of tomorrow, a so-called European Agenda for Tourism 2050. We have, with the help of stakeholders, arrived at a set of action points on 3 key areas: safe and seamless tourism experience, greener holidays, and and data-driven tourism. And we also saw that despite the different profiles of stakeholders and the different perspectives they're sitting on, there is a largely shared vision and goals on how to arrive to a sustainable and resilient tourism ecosystem in Europe and what the key ingredients are necessary for that. I invite you to discover the website of the convention, which I will also type in the chat for everybody to discover, because there you can discover the different action points that were agreed upon and proposed by stakeholders, and also the 25 written statements we have from ministers responsible for tourism in the member states, and also a written statement by the parliament. So if the vision is more or less sketched out, then how do we get there? First of all, we need to save tourism, and I will not stop repeating that, and we need to find the right balance between acting now and looking at the short-term needs and the longer-term perspective. We need that, and we need to get that right in the cooperation context, in the investments, in the reforms that will come. We also need the right framework. We need the right governance tools, if I can call it like that, to work on shared priorities on European level and advance this cooperation with the European institutions, with the industry and destinations. And we also need to engage in this type of cooperation at the regional level with regions and of course with micro-regions. And that's why your work is very important. And I hope that this engagement that we need to bring forth at all levels, from the local, regional, macro-regional, national and European level, will help us not only overcome the crisis and the disruption that it has brought, but also seize the opportunities, because indeed this crisis brings some opportunities not to be missed for tourism, especially if we wish to arrive at a tourism ecosystem tomorrow, which is greener, more innovative and more resilient for the sake of local economies. So I will stop here. I'm very much interested to listen to the other speakers, and thank you again for the opportunity to bring those thoughts to your audience.
Thank you so much, Anna. It was a pleasure to have us, to have you with us. And just to highlight a few points I took out of your very sharp presentation. First, we certainly understood better how important tourism is for the European economy, and also for the most vulnerable regions of Europe. And you know that for DG REGIO, helping lagging regions to converge with the most performant region is really part of our motto. You provided us also with a lot of ideas of what could be the new form of tourism. We are always saying that tourism has to be reinvented, but the tourism of tomorrow will not be the one of yesterday. And you already provided us with some hints about a tourism which is supported by clean mobility, person being interested by also a sustainable destination, but also more forms of cultural tourism or rural tourism. And then you came out with also why cooperation is so important at all levels. And I believe we got the message that if we want to save and promote a new form of tourism, we need to have a shared vision. And then you also reassured us that the Commission was working very hard to provide the tourists of today already with some tools which are so important. You mentioned the website of the Commission, which is providing tremendously useful information for travelers about which is the color code of the region you want to go, and how they see you coming from, which is quite interesting. And I'm also very excited to hear that we are going to move to a single mapping system. Sometimes it is quite a headache to understand what is the color of the region you are going to, because it depends of your country of origin. That's extremely welcome also as a concrete example of added value of the Commission. Thank you for this, and I'm also pleased to hear that you are staying with us. Now I will give the floor to George Drakopoulos, that we have commissioned to produce a report, and he will present both the methodology that he has been using to develop the report, but also the finding of the report. So thank you very much, George. The floor is yours, and you have 10 minutes. 15 minutes, sorry.
Thank you, Mr.
Apologies, 15.
To all of you. First of all, I would like to thank Regio for this assignment and DG GROW for the continued support. So in the next less than 15 minutes, I will try to talk about the impact of COVID-19 on the tourism economies of the MRS member countries, what has been the response, and what is already the beginning of the restart. So assessing the impact and producing a set of recommendations has as a very important prerequisite to understand the tourism economies. We have a big number of countries, different size, different structure of economies, different administrative system, different development stages in terms of tourism, which all have to work together. So second part of the study was to see what has happened in previous crises we have faced in tourism and to see what was the initial impact assessment and which measures have been taken already. Then preparing the restart was a bit of challenge because restart has a lot of components which we all have to be combined in order to produce a good set of recommendations. So assessing the impact, two are the major factors, GDP and employment. And at the same time, we have to test and to study a few other parts of the tourism economy. However, there is a big question mark about the performance of multipliers. There is no experience so far from such a big recession. Recessions we had in the last 20 or 30 years were -2, -5, -10%. With -75 or -80% in the tourism economy, there is not at all experience how multipliers should behave. And trying to find the impact on the GDP and the employment, tourism employment, the most important factor here, which will affect these two variables, is the international tourist arrivals. So first we had a look at the contribution of tourism to the GDP in the MRS countries, with a couple of exceptions like Montenegro, Croatia, and Greece, and Albania. All the others are between 5 and 12%, which means that yes, tourism, it is indeed a very important sector in these countries. It is the same more or less level of employment, which confirms that tourism, it is a pillar of development in all those countries. Is tourism a priority in all those countries? Yes, more or less they have the same level. However, in terms of tourism infrastructure, some of the countries are better organized, are on a better competitive level. Let's go now to see what happened in COVID. We first heard about COVID by the end of 2019 in December, and many among us thought that it was more or less a Chinese affair, as it has been a few years ago with SARS. However, that was not the case. In the first 2 months, we started having the first cases in Europe. February, Lombardy was suffering a lot. And in March, we all felt that. So we start the travel restrictions by mid of March, and before the end of April, almost all tourist destinations around the world had imposed travel restrictions. No travel at all in most of them, or with the exception of some repatriation flights and bringing medicine from one country to another. Then we tried to see what happened with previous crises, which at the end, we concluded there is nothing to compare with it. In SARS, 5 months after the incidents, we had growth. September 11, after 6 months, growth was there. And even the worst case, which was the global economic crisis, after 10 months, we had the first month of growth. In our case now with COVID, we have no idea when it's going to end. But we can make the assumption, the working hypothesis that 2021, for the tourism economy, it will be another COVID year. The plans, including COVID on stage for 2021. Trying to estimate the number of international tourist arrivals, we also studied the mode of transports within Europe, where we see the expected dominance by air. And IATA gave us some figures which were very disappointing. It was a huge dive, both in capacity and revenue. Compared to the other crises, we see how disastrous has been COVID so far. But that was the case. And despite the fact that the first 2 months of 2020, we had a slight increase in international tourist demand. From March to April, we went almost minus 44% according to data provided by UNTWO. So we have constructed a set of basic indicators, 13 different indicators. We have produced table for each single country of the MRS strategy, area strategies, and we have selected 3 groups with what we call leading indicators in order to try to estimate the impact. That we have done with the combination of the number of flights provided on a daily basis for every single country of Europe by Eurocontrol. And when we see that when we touch down in the beginning of the April, picking up after the mid of June. And then we compared the shares of domestic and international tourism, as domestic was the hope of the tourism sector to have some business this year. But again, domestic is a nice way of redistributing wealth in a country, but international tourism, international arrivals, it's the new wealth coming in. At the same time, we studied the flows within the macro regions. So it's more or less 35% tourists moving within the macro region, which seems there's plenty of space for development. I mean, reaching 50% of this will be many, many million more arrivals. So by week 2 in June, we have estimated this decrease in all 4 macro regions. And then we produce a survey asking the member countries to give us some data and make their own estimations. This has been done with the huge help of the macro-regional facilitators, the people who work with us. And we had a little problem which we cannot overpass and which makes the survey not to be very scientific. Few countries responded very quickly, while some others responded very lately. The problem is that we cannot really compare, but the ones who have responded lately in September, they gave us real figures. It was not an estimation, it was not a prediction. They knew exactly what happened in July and August. Comparing our estimations with the results of the survey, well, we were not too bad. And in the average, we were very happy. But still, having minus 70 or minus 65% is not a pleasant situation for tourism. Then from the survey, we pointed out what have been the response measures, and we have classified them according to UNTWO methodology in fiscal and monetary policy measures, employment and skills, market intelligence, and public-private partnerships. The reaction on behalf of the European Commission has been immediate with a set of measures which have been analyzed before by Ms. Athanassopoulou, and already we're thinking about the restart. What do we need for this restart? First of all, to support jobs and provide liquidity. In early March this year, the SME strategy has been revealed, and I think this has to be reconsidered again as we have now totally different conditions. As far as the jobs is concerned, I put an asterisk here, pointing out that everybody who has not a job does not classify as an unemployed. And we need a mix of policy because labor economics suggests it's slightly different. There's a big difference supporting employment positions from supporting workers and employees. And so far, it's proven that all countries need a mix of labor policy in order to support these jobs. Restarting tourism will have as a must. We need businesses and people working for that. Then we need to restore consumer confidence. When travel restrictions have been imposed with all these frequent changes, people were confused. They didn't know, shall I go there? Shall I come back on time? Shall I be in quarantine when I come back? Which was not a nice feeling. And this has discouraged many people from traveling this summer. In week 1 in September, the private sector of Europe, or they call themselves Tourism Manifesto, asked European governments to provide common criteria and thresholds, and we were very happy to see that yesterday, this is the fresh news, the Council adopted a recommendation to coordinate measures, but I think it should be something more than a recommendation. The other interesting thing is that this map, weekly map, it's broken down by regions, which highlights even more the role of the macro-regional strategies. And this, I guess it is NUTS 2, which it should be. As I was telling the whole summer, if Madrid has a problem, why should we restrict travel from whole Spain when Canary Islands are 3 hours flight, or Galicia and the País Vasco are 600 or 700 kilometers away? The next step is to gather and share travel intelligence. We have used digital technologies in order to trace COVID cases with full respect on personal data. We can use the same thing to improve our advertising. Advertising should be smart, so that we move to the digital thing, plus the fact that from a marketing point of view, this summer we added one more variable to our segmentation model, which is the COVID-19 traveler. And then we need some, what I call R actions. R is a word play from the R variable measuring how many cases transmitted by one person to another in the COVID terminology. We need to remove all the restrictions, to restore the connections, and to resume all services. For all this, we need a framework. We have to discuss, and we all agree to a common framework from starting how to locate the COVID-19 or another future crisis in the future, and how we can use the data respecting the human rights. Technology has no limit, but human rights do have. We should keep on subsidizing business, employment position, and workers. We must make harmonized protocols in everyday reality if we want, of course we need, and of course we want to restore consumer confidence. Investment distancing, which is another word play from social distancing, it might be a good idea if we want to reduce this trend of mass tourism. We all know that some areas of Europe do suffering a lot, while some others from heavy investment, high densities, while some others, they have plenty of space. Shall we discuss about travel corridors? Definitely now with the new mapping, there will be some green areas. They can construct a travel corridor. Let's discuss how we can make it. Let's try to produce public-private partnerships at regional level, not only national level. And all this heading for a new normal. So, and looking specific now to the macro-regional strategies, at least we can gather and share information within these countries. We can try to formulate some specific tourism products, and we must be ready for crisis management. Unfortunately, the survey indicated that some countries were not ready. They had no crisis management committees. So, summarizing recommendations: provide liquidity for business and support employment and employees. Apply the harmonized protocols, gather and share travel intelligence, get ready for crisis management, and create public-private partnerships. At the same time, let's be active in the discussion about the new normal. We need to co-create this new normal. We need to reshape the future of tourism being active. And I think that MRS provides a good platform for that. And in order to do it better, as I say that we need more vitamin C, more collaboration, more coordination, and more cooperation, as cooperation is the basic concept, is the basic spirit of the macro-regional strategy. Thank you very much for your attention. I will be happy to answer your questions later. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Drakopoulos, for this excellent presentation. I believe that first, the historical perspective is allowing us to really better understand the sheer size of the shock the tourism industry is going through now. In particular, when you compare to previous shocks, which are well known, like the SARS or the attack of September. Of 11 September. It was also very interesting to see what can be done together. That's certainly something which will help us in our way forward. Now I will give the floor again to Baiba, who has some more questions to us in order to remain interactive.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Jean-Pierre. Yes, what we would like you to do now, it will be the same Slido that we will use once more. And these two coming questions are built on the presentation you just heard. In these two questions, we will ask you which of the actions that were presented just a moment ago by our expert, which of those are political priority? What do you think? And then We will also ask you in the next question where macro-regional strategies could take an action. So please be active, please reply. If you find it difficult to reply there or you face any challenges, please use chat to let us know. Besides, in this window, in this pool, you can also move into the questions, open questions to our speakers, because you are having two tabs in front of you. Please post the question there, and if you read some question that you like a lot, you can also vote for that one. So pool is open. Thank you very much, Ivano, for sharing it. Let's move on and hope we can have a time to return back to these results. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Baibas. So now we are going to move to the next speaker, Simona, who is a program manager working in the Joint Secretariat of the DTP, so the Danube Transnational Program in Hungary. And Simona, we would like you to tell us how transnational program can support tourism sector to adapt to the current situation. And also, we would like to have your view on how the program will help supporting the tourism and remain aligned with also the Danube strategy in order to support the tourism recovery. And then we would like also to have your views on what policy objective would be the most relevant for your program in helping a smooth tourism recovery. So thank you very much, Simona.
Good afternoon from my side, and thank you very much for this opportunity to present the program. I hope you hear me well. I have two slides that will accompany my intervention today. It's not a real presentation, it's more to stay focused. First of all, I would like to say that in the current programming period, we are financing valorization of cultural and natural heritage for regional development purposes. We are actually proud of our portfolio of projects that are dealing with this topic. We have 19 projects that are dealing either classical heritage projects, like promoting Art Nouveau or Jewish heritage of the Danube region, but also we have a new approach that we have seen in this programming period compared to the previous one, 2007, 2013, that these new projects are very much focused on finding the hidden heritage of the Danube region and to help smaller settlements or regions to grow based on valorization of this heritage for tourist development and, of course, economic development in the end. Also, we have seen a development in the desire to develop joint touristic products and to have a joint approach to developing, for example, touristic impact models in the Danube region. We have the case of the Amazon of Europe, which is Mura-Drava Danube Biosphere Reserve, which all 5 countries are working together to develop a joint touristic package that can be offered to promote this valuable area of the Danube region. We have seen also a focus on services and attractions which are initiated by local communities. This is something that has been now in development, and we would like that also, if the task force will approve in the future program, we will support this type of community-led touristic products in order to engage much better communities in the and to show them their assets that can use for economic development. In relation to the pandemic, this pandemic found us in when we selected the third call projects. These projects were developed a year ago in 2019, and when we selected them in March 2020, the pandemic was ongoing already. Therefore, we asked them to adapt, of course, their work plan and their activities to the current situation, but also to include activities that are coming to tackle the issues of tourism in this pandemic. Therefore, we had very interesting proposals from our projects that dealt with including health issues in touristic models or in destination management models, including an assessment of the capacities of these destinations, taking into consideration social distancing between tourists and making a safe, promoting a safe tourism in the Danube region. So our projects already are implementing this type of activities even now. What we have also seen that they started the implementation and the projects realized that there is a lack of skills now on the market for adapting the tourists to the actual situation generated by the pandemic. Either digital skills or skills on how to promote safe tourism and how to make the certain regions attractive again. Therefore, we are rather flexible in implementation of these projects and we allow them to add such type of activities that are building the capacities of the partners and the regions involved in the projects to the actual situation and to the future situation that is unknown and everyone has to be prepared. In the future program, we are going to tackle tourism in a way or another. However, the programming is still ongoing. However, the task force that we have is composed by the 14 countries already selected the specific objective that is dealing with tourism, but from a different point of view that we have done it in this programming period. We are tackling policy objective 4. We will tackle policy objective 4. With specific objective that is looking to enhance the role of culture in tourism in economic development, social inclusion, and social innovation. However, the focus of this specific objective that we will tackle depends on one side on the final regulations that will come next year most probably, and also on the decision of the task force members on the actual topics that we will tackle in this direction. We have, however, a territorial analysis that identified certain challenges, many challenges actually, of the Danube region in tourist sector, like, for example, a lack of joint planning of infrastructure in the region, joint development of touristic products. There is a disparity in the destination management of the region. Therefore, the program can we already started to think how we can address this specific objective and also tackle social inclusion in relation to tourism, like, for example, remote areas, smaller cities, smaller settlements. Nevertheless, this all depends on the future decision of the task force and how they will develop. Of course, we do all this programming together with the USDR, because the Danube Transnational Program is supporting the implementation of the macro-regional strategy. And in this direction, already next month, we will have a joint meeting between the programming task force and the national coordinators of the macro-regional strategy, where we will present this territorial strategy for the future program. And we will start to discuss on the focus of the future program, and it will be a joint it will be all the input of the Danube strategy will be taken into consideration, of course, in the final definition of the future program. Nevertheless, tourism can be also addressed by other policy objectives that might be chosen by our program or by another program of the region, of the Danube region. For example, innovation and creative industries, of course, it can be tackled. There is a lack of infrastructure infrastructure for mobility in the Danube region, and this can be tackled by programs that are dealing with transport or other issues. However, this most probably will not be in the focus of the Danube Transnational Program. Thank you very much. If you have any questions,
Thank you, Simona. So, no, thank you for this presentation, which was extremely relevant. We also saw that, for instance, the model that we were discussing in the past for a more sustainable tourism is extremely relevant as compared to the one you presented, notably to move away from mass tourism to go to a more niche tourism with different products. I see also that I need to do some effort in my timekeeping work as we are slightly behind schedule. So I suggest, Simona, if you agree, that I move immediately to the next speaker, who is Vasta Claric. And thank you, Vasta, to be with us today. I hope that I pronounce your name properly. Maybe I should have rather said Claric instead of Claric. Vlasta, you are expert in tourism at the Ministry of Tourism in Croatia, and you are working also in the European Union strategy for the Adriatic and Ionian region as facility point thematic expert and also a senior expert advisor. We've seen in the presentation provided by George that the tourism sector was quite important in the countries of the user strategy. It is also reflected in the user strategy as tourism being one of the pillars of the strategy. So I have one question for you. And I would like to ask you how the strategic projects which are identified by the member of the tourism steering group of the user strategy can respond to the post-COVID-19 challenges. Thank you. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much for this question and for this opportunity actually to address you all on this occasion and I express my gratitude to European Commission for organizing of this event. It is quite true what you have said. We are coming through a number of gloomy future perspectives regarding tourism, and tourism suffers, as Ms. Anastopoulou has said. So actually, we are all proud that Europe is a unique destination today, and as a destination, we consider it to be an organism which is now quite severely threatened. The lifeblood of the European destinations, the movements of and communication of people is threatened, and the people being at the heart of the tourism movements on both sides, as host communities and as visitors, are changing. Mindsets are changing, and this expected but accelerated process has to be handled with care. So this is why we were thinking about the new future tourism products which will answer the question of the threats which are here in front of us. Regarding the changes and threats, three words have been mentioned quite often and repeatedly: cooperation, coordination, and coalition, which are recognized as a requirement for resilience in crisis. And here is where the macro-regional strategies come as a possible solution. Targeted goals of EUSER correspond to these needs, especially in Pillar 4. So Pillar 4 of the EUSER, covering sustainable tourism development and culture, addresses two specific topics: the sustainable tourism management and tourism diversification, supported by 6 related selected priorities. Those priorities were addressed through the process of selecting TSG 4 strategic project ideas, or the flagships, to be further on developed, and which were identified by voting by the members of the tourism steering group. So when we speak about the selected projects, first 2 of them deal actually with the diversified tourism offer redistributed through the whole territory of macro regions. Which are the cultural air, or a project which is dealing with a research and survey on cultural tourism demand in the Adriatic Ionian region to establish a unified and harmonized methodological framework, and would enable Adriatic and Ionian countries to monitor cultural tourism demand characteristics and the impacts from tourist activity to cultural resources, local economy and society, establishing actually new cultural tourism products. Projects is fostering Adriatic and Ionian cultural heritage through diversification of tourism offer and is answering the priority needs for research and development for the purpose of improvement of SMEs' performance and diversification. Also, the project corresponds to Green Deal goals and EU policy objectives number 1 and number 4, stressing greener and low carbon Europe and more social Europe, recovering tourism and culture. The second project, which was selected by voting of our members, is our Air Cultural Routes. It is actually a project that should harmonize redistribution of tourism flows through macro-regional territories using cultural routes as tool for creation of innovative, compatible, identity-based tourism products. And it is actually addressing regional connectivity of locally micromanaged routes. It is answering the priority of development of sustainable and thematic macro-regional routes. It also is dealing with an important issue of the development of hybrid products, which will be innovative and compatible and managed through the whole region. And then the next set of projects is dealing actually with the sustainable and responsible tourism management. These next 3 projects, green mapping, destination air or DES air and cruise air, will point out the management, the possibilities of sustainable and responsible tourism management, which is answering the priority of the need for the development of tourism businesses and classes. Green mapping is a digitalized support to all green businesses in macro region. It presents support to the development and promotion of quality-based micro and small enterprises and tourism operations and destinations in the EOSEA, in order to improve their sustainability, competitiveness, and give them more visibility and market uptake. It also corresponds to Green Deal goals and EU policy objectives number 1 and number 2, stressing greener, low carbon Europe and smarter Europe. Destination air or DES air is answering the need for harmonized education, training, and upskilling for new tourism businesses in order to strengthen competitiveness of the EOSEA countries by increasing the quality of integrated sustainable destination management and providing high quality jobs. DES air actually tackles the issues of future skills and jobs, and again, development of hybrid skills, which will become increasingly important in order to provide cross-cutting knowledge and support to multi-stakeholder management process moderation. The aim is also to provide value-added jobs for the SMEs and micro enterprises. Destination air should also provide additional knowledge for the management of crisis at EU destinations, as this is one of the key challenges to be expected in the future. And finally, the 5th macro-regional project, which is to be developed, is cruise air, answering the priority need of expanding the tourist season to all year round through special interest tourism and promoting and supporting development of special interest tourism, cruising tourism. It should provide better management of cruise destinations, both seaside and continental, promotion and support to development of special interest tourism connected with cruising, and it should also provide destination management plans equivalent to strategic and action plans for sustainable tourism in seaside and continental cruise destinations, actually providing smart specialization and diversifying tourism products. All this actually should lead to recovery. And when we speak about the recovery of tourism in the post-COVID era, we do hope that the integrated approach, the cooperation and smart specialization, which are meant to be the core of the future projects, together with diversification, can provide the livability of the destination. Together with the digitalization, but not without people. And we are very much aware that all around the recovery, we have to think about the new sensibility of our users. They are users who are actually very much concerned about their safety and security. So hopefully the projects will also take this into account through their development and provide the humanization of the tourism product, the future tourism product. So what we are counting on is not only sustainable tourism to be developed, responsible tourism, but the tourism which transforms not only people, but the society. So we are hoping for transformative tourism to be the result of our 5 projects which have been selected. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vlasta, for this high-intensity presentation. I must say that it was quite dense. Thank you also for presenting to us the 5 flagships which are contributing to address the key issues that we've been discussing in the previous presentation. This was very useful also to see how to tailor the support provided by a macro-regional strategy to the specific need of a region. I will now turn to the next speaker, who is, sorry, I just need to have my paper in the right order. I apologize for that. So we are now moving to the next macro-regional strategy. It is the USALP macro-regional strategy, and I will give the floor to François Boissac, who is the director for tourism in the region Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes. And you are also representing here today the French presidency of this region. In this macro region, I will just give a few figures so that we have maybe a better scene setting of where the strategy is. 30% of the tourism arrival from the in the macro regions is originating from the macro region itself, so that's quite already a large figure. And if we look at Austria, 55% of the tourism arriving in Austria are coming from Germany, Switzerland, and Italy. So that's quite an interesting, I would say, context. In this context, I would like to ask you to see what are the priorities of the French presidency in supporting tourism, and in particular, having in mind also the new program that can be supported by the European Regional Development Funds. So, Mr. Boissac, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Alquin, for having invited me to take part in the discussion, and also for your question. First of all, I don't want to insist again on the huge economic and social impact of the pandemic crisis for the tourism sector. Figures have already been shown, and we are witnessing a powerful deflagration, which will not be recovered before 2 to 4 years. And the year 2019 was for the French regions of USALP an exceptional year for tourism in terms of incomes and employment. And I think it was the sheer figures for all the European Union. So as you mentioned, USALP depends less from the international tourism demand than other macro regions. But as you also stressed, our alpine destination is characterized by peaks of frequentation and a strong seasonality concentrated on winter sports and summer activities. And we are very worried for winter 2020 because our strong domestic market with 70 million inhabitants will not be sufficient to compensate for the lack of frequentation by our foreign friends, and especially with the threat of hard Brexit. And the fact is that our ski resorts are clearly in competition inside the USALP macro region. So we have to think about other programs or other products, touristic products. So the crisis is deep, but in some way, it can be seen as an opportunity to change our behavior. It has already been said before me. And in this context, the states and region of USALP adopted a manifesto called Together to Shape a Sustainable and Resilient Alpine Regions last June. And the Euro-Alpine partners saw in the manifesto an opportunity to affirm the priorities of the states and region of the Alpine region for the coming years, taking fully into account the crisis situation caused by the COVID pandemic in favor of a sustainable recovery and the resilience of the Alpine area. So the states and region expressed some priorities in the manifesto for the coming years. The next financial programs for the European Union, as well as the next states region contractualization in France, should try to be coherent and integrate and co-finance these priorities, which are, among other, the stimulation of the transition towards sustainable year-round tourism. And this priority is a very transversal one, and deals with climate change, preservation of alpine biodiversity, energy transition, sustainable transport and mobility solution, consumption of local mountain products, and involvement of youth also, at least. So these priorities have been translated into recommendation and have been together share among different managing authorities in Brussels. There will be a meeting, hopefully, to share this among the managing authorities gathered inside the Alpine macro-regional. Now, coming back to your question, and in relation to the approval of the manifesto, we will set up ERDF programs where tourism will be tagged as a priority sector. And Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes is involved in 10 different programs supported through ERDF. For instance, we have the operational regional programs foresees to support the competitiveness of SMEs, particularly in remote areas, and embracing housing and outdoor activities. And since the occurrence of the crisis, it's worth underlining that there is a new priority for now in our project of our regional operational program, dealing with the reinforcement of culture and tourism in the economic development, social inclusion, and social innovation. This objective will allow supporting public key projects and also supporting touristic projects with educational and social dimension. And furthermore, a specific part will be devoted to the development of the Massif Central through the promotion of outdoor walking path and outdoor resorts. A specific part will also target the touristic development of Yarona, which is a Euro cycling route. So as you can see, we have a lot, and we have decided to stress the influence of the tourism for the economic sector. And last but not least, links will also be made with the operational regional program of our neighbor French regions, for the Jura, for instance, Bourgogne-Franche-Comté region, and for the Alps, which the managing authorities, the Région Provence-Alpes-Côte d'Azur, with a focus on touristic diversification of mountain areas based on natural, cultural, agricultural, craft resources of our territories. And last but not least, we are of course involved in the design of Interreg programs, which are tools for the implementation of the strategy of the USALP macro region. And on the basis of the recommendation of Mr. Dracopoulos' report, we will also take advantage of the Interreg Alpine Space program to promote a transnational model of tourism based on health products. And in that context, I have to remind the role of my colleague from Salzburg, Mr. Bernard Lehofer, who is project leader in innovation service and who coordinates a subgroup on tourism in the ESALP region. So we have a project, for instance, which is called ELPS, which has been approved in October 2019 and seems to have a predictive effect with regard to the current situation, because it is an illustration of what should be done and how to combine tourism and health. And this project is chaired by partners coming from 7 countries in the Alps: Austria, Germany, Italy, Switzerland, Slovenia, Liechtenstein, and France. And the idea behind is how to preserve and improve his health capital and how to develop health tourism products in alpine destination. And a tool has been set up whose user shall be the person responsible for tourism in the destination, tourism manager and politics particularly. So the aim is to improve a framework condition for utilizing alpine natural health resources by developing health tourism products and service change. So I won't give you any detail because I'm not in charge of the project, but as you can see, and for the Auvergne Region Rhône-Alpes, we want to promote our 24 resorts thermal based on a concept study in preventing health, connecting with mountain and health. So we believe in our common capacity to explore new forms of tourism, taking into account climate change, dealing with global trends such as thirst for nature-based experience, and increase health consciousness. And we also believe hardly that the European Union can promote efficient incentives to be at the forefront of a renewable tourist model, as it has been said last Monday with all the representatives of the tourism sector in Brussels. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Boissac. Ivano is informing me that the digitalization has also an influence on the way you manage the time, so that in 5 minutes, the meeting will be automatically over. In order to use the five last minutes of our meeting, first of all, as a point of coherence with Baiba, who has been assisting us, I'm not sure we can have the last questions, or we need to have the questions while we are speaking. What do you think, Baiba?
I unfortunately do not see really many questions there. I see some, but they are very much in line also with what we discussed, with what is the role of macro-regional strategies. And I am very pleased to see that our colleagues from the Adriatic Ionian macro-regional strategy and also from Alpine strategy provided their input here as exactly working daily within that framework. Yeah, and here you also can see Ivano is sharing what we got as replies in the polls, where I also tried to inform you regularly on the updates. So this is what I have, and I know we are having 3 minutes.
Yes, I think for me then the most important thing I need to say now is really a big thank you to all colleagues who have been organizing this session, which was incredibly ambitious in terms of number of speakers and also the level of the speakers. For me, it has been really an enriching discussion. Among the persons I would like to mention, in addition to the speakers, I would like certainly to highlight the very important work made by Baiba and also Ivano Magadzu, who has been helping us with the technical aspect, but also in the commission to Joanna Moudou-Nisler, who has been helping to set up this very comprehensive presentation. I was really impressed also to see that we kept more than 50 participants up to now, showing the interest that the session has generated and how relevant it was. So thank you very much to all of you, and looking forward to keep discussing this in the context of the different macroeconomic strategies, in the context of the work made by the presidencies, and certainly also seizing the opportunity generated by the forum of the strategies which are coming very soon, in order to make sure that we take most of the potential of the response provided by the European Union to support the sector of tourism to overcome the COVID crisis and to use cooperation as an enabler. I think Ernest Bye-Bye want to add something? No?
No.
Then I will thank you here, and we can leave you here with 30 minutes in advance to end this presentation. So thank you very much to all of you.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I think we will be also kicked out like in a minute. So
Yeah, we can
thank you.
stay until the very end, but it's fine. Okay, I think we are all leaving now.
Can we
Okay.
ask the Secretariat just to save chat, because there were quite some good inputs. Ivano, I don't know if you noticed one. I will send you in WhatsApp.
Okay, please. I cannot save the chat, unfortunately.
I cannot either, but for
Yeah,
Secretariat it would be
Secretariat.
excellent. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much and lovely evening.
Thank you. You too.
Bye.